Good day, everybody. Today's the 21st of August, 2025. I'm Connor MacIvor. We're going to talk about real estate, what's going on in the local market. In addition, we're going to cover some inventory, and we're going to move through our continuing video series about the best ways to buy a house and get your best deal on that residence. Now, of course, we've gone through most of that process. I'm going to cover some numbers here. As far as inventory, we're down from about 810 to 775. This has been creeping down over the past couple weeks, so we are still getting less inventory, and more than likely that's going to have to do with the stay on interest rates. Of course, the mortgage interest rates fluctuate, right? They go up a little bit here and there, but really there has been no big rate changes because the Fed isn't moving in any direction but deciding to stand still. Now, whichever side of that you happen to be on, whether you think it will be better or worse, definitely the major Fed funds rate reduction would translate into home buyers starting to kick out and want to purchase real estate. In addition, that would also cause, depending on how much of a decrease that would be and how much that Fed funds rate would then affect mortgage interest rates, because they're somewhat attached, but really the mortgage interest rate is more tied to the 10-year bond. That's why you get the fluctuations all the time. More confidence, again, less confidence, they adjust appropriately. But currently, if those in the Fed funds rate was actually dropped, we would see an impact on mortgage interest rates, especially if it was done at a pretty high level. What would end up happening is not only would buyers increase their activity on the market, but we would also see a lot of real estate sellers that we consider as having golden handcuffs. So basically, they're not selling because they have an ultra low interest rate, so it doesn't make sense to them to sell something and go buy something else where they're going to have, double or more of an interest rate. If the rates did come down, then we would see that change. So this inventory here would potentially increase, but if there was enough buyer drive and enough interest, which I believe there would be, because I talk to buyers every day that are interested in buying real estate, and a lot of them are standing their ground hoping that rate would eventually change or something would be switched up basically in that realm. But again, once that happens, we're probably going to see a massive flurry of activity, probably somewhat reminiscent as we saw back in the 2000s when real estate really kicked off. There were multiple offers on every single property that was listed for sale. Properties didn't last on the active market more than a few days, and that was only because they were still working out trying to get everybody to go higher in their counteroffer form. So we started to see real estate get even more expensive in that particular time. So we had properties that were increasing $70,000, $80,000 a month when you looked at the overall historical values. That was quite the market. And understandably so, we had the same issue that we would have if we were to get into a much lower interest rate, where now we would have a lot of supply coming onto the market, but we would also have a lot of buyers interested. All of those sellers that potentially would sell at that time would also need to buy something. So then you also have the buyers that have been waiting for the right time to buy jumping back into the market, so you would have massive competition. Now, I don't know if those interest rates are going to come down now or sometime. I don't know how the economy is going to be. That's anybody's guess. Anybody to tell you for sure this is what's going to happen, don't listen. But here's the deal. If it does happen, then more than likely you're going to have high competition and properties are going to start to get more expensive. Right now, there's pretty much a steady state in real estate. There's not a lot of increase, very, very marginal increases at best. And if you move away from the major city centers, if you get away from Los Angeles, further like into the Midwest, other states, you're watching as property prices are starting to decline. Out here in Los Angeles, we're pretty much steady. We're not declining at this point. But if you give it time, same trends, we'll probably see that as well, depending on the inventory and then, of course, depending on buyer drive. So looking today, we have 775 total active listings on the market. I'll get into that video series that I was talking about as I look at the other real estate data besides the 775, breaking it down here. This is, by the way, this is Santa Clarita, openhouses.com, my main site. What I end up doing is after I do this video, I'll update this here on the home page, so you'll see this date being reflected as of the 21st, because that's when I'm recording this. But when I put together these shows, I'll place them right here. So any day after 10 o'clock a.m., now it happens to be 6:27 a.m., but after 10 o'clock a.m., just depending on workout schedule and all this other stuff, appointments and all that, if I happen to have any that early morning, of what kind of show I'm preparing for the day and showings and so on, this will be replaced. All right, so we have 9 coming soon listings that have occurred here in the past 7 days. 77 new listings have entered the market for sale. 86 properties have had their prices changed in the past 7 days. We also have 34 properties that have gone back on the market. These are properties that were in escrow that have canceled and come back on the market as being for sale. That number is starting to increase, but this, of course, is a weekly snapshot. So when you look at things weekly and not, taking a 2 or 3 month time frame into account, numbers can look like they're actually higher than they are. This averages out to be about a third of properties that go into escrow falling out, and that's been the trend for quite a while, more than a year. Looking at the active under contract properties, these are real estate listings that have gone in escrow. 43 properties are pending. 57 properties closed this past week. 11 expired. 18 canceled. 21 have been put on hold. 9 have been withdrawn from the market. If you're a buyer, your strategy is important. As I went through this entire video series, getting basically down to the end where you're about to do your final walkthrough, that's what we're going to talk about today. As a real estate buyer, when you're purchasing real estate, the first decisions are, should you be buying a house? And then moving from that to how do you select your agent? How do you get the best deal? Then moving from that into how do you search for real estate? What are the best ways to look for the properties? A good tip would be talking about these 11 expired, 18 canceled, 9 withdrawn. We're pushing 35 properties there that potentially could fit your criteria, some of them at least. And they're not even on the market for sale. So what's the strategy? Your agent should be able to make follow-ups with those properties and then provide for you a list of things that might not be on the market that have been removed from the market, and actually door knock those sellers individually and say, listen, I'm Connor. And this is a con too. So don't think everybody that knocks on your door that says they have a buyer's being honest. Whenever I do it, I make sure I take my buyer's portfolio with me. Yes, I'll actually get a folder, and I'll take the folder. It'll have my buyer's name on it. No BS, a real buyer. It'll have their FICO score. It'll have their potential credit history and the approval letter from the lender, proof of funds showing that they have the wherewithal to purchase this house, at least at the numbers that it was listed for in the past, or maybe with some adjustments. But I actually go and I say, listen, I'm really a real estate agent. Get that. And then I do have these buyers that are very interested in your house. We've been searching the properties that are on the market. None of them really seem to stack up, but I noticed that yours was canceled or expired or whatever. I think it would be a good fit for my buyer. They're real. Here's their package. I can't leave this with you. It's their documents, but I just wanted to show you that they're real. And would you mind if we set up a time when they could come have a look at your house? There you go. So that's how that would work if, in fact, you had that agent. That was out of the box, thinking out of the box, not trapped out of the box. All right, so that was that. So that final walkthrough, so you get through the whole process, right? And then you're about to close. So you've done your loan docs, you've answered your lender with regard to any inquiries they might be making when it comes to pre-funding conditions. Maybe they needed some more documentation from your employer. Maybe they needed to see some kind of a bank statement or whatever it may be. Great. So you got to that point. Now, pretty much we're clear to close, so it's going to happen. A couple things to consider. You're going to be doing a final walkthrough. And tomorrow, I'll get into the funding on a Friday and then recording on a Monday scenario and how that possession works. But today, we're going to talk about that final walkthrough. There were times in the past, I've been doing this since 1998, where I encountered some things that were of big concern to me. Representing buyers on the buyer side of it. And this has also occurred with sellers, but not as much, at least not in my watch. But when you're representing properties that are tenant occupied, that might be a foreclosure and the tenants are holding out and staying until the property finishes, that's a danger sign, because what's to keep them from actually staying in the property? There's not a lot of teeth there. They've already been living there. So it's not like they broke into the house to set up living. They actually have been there for a while, so it's difficult to prove to the local law enforcement that they need to get out even when there's a new owner, so you have to watch out. But that final walkthrough is typically the scenario. It's known as a verification of property condition, and it was when we would go out and take our clients back to the property, and there was a specific purpose. First off, are the people that are living in the property, whether they're the owners or tenants or whatever, are they leaving? We do this usually a couple days before funding. What's going on? If it doesn't look like anybody's leaving, and this happened many years ago, maybe back in 2011 or 2012, where I was representing a buyer at a property in the valley, and we go do our walkthrough, and these people are just kicking back watching TV. Nothing's been moved, no boxes, no sign of anything. So I asked the kid, who spoke another language, not English, who was translating for the parents, kid, 18, 19, ask your dad, when is the moving process? And he said, well, the dad responded, he said, well, we're not moving. I said, well, hold on a second. So I'm representing the buyer, so of course I say, okay, give it a moment. So I call the seller's agent. Well, I say, your seller isn't going anywhere. So what's the issue? And they, of course, immediately get to the property, within 10, 15 minutes. And they start talking to them. They speak the same language. They start talking to them and explaining it to them. But, he comes back to me and says, well, he's like leaving. I said, well, I can't let my buyers close. I'm going to have to notify escrow to stop. Everything needs to stop because your seller isn't going anywhere. My buyer is going to be stuck. So that's not fair. So we're going to go ahead and cancel the transaction or put it on pause as long as it takes. And you know what? You'd be surprised how fast people started moving right then. There were people showing up from all over the world to help these people move out. The kids were being great. Everybody was moving stuff, pulling stuff out of the house. They were calling people. So it actually worked out. That final walkthrough, if it wouldn't have been done, we might not have known. So then we go to hand them the keys on Monday at 5 p.m. or whatever that particular release of the property would be. And we'll talk about that in tomorrow's video, kind of how all that works. But we would have gone there and they would have still been there, maybe not even opened the door. And now my buyers own the property. Now they have people inside of it. Good luck. So we don't want that to happen. In addition, the verification of property condition or that final walkthrough also, if you're in escrow and you ask the seller to repair certain things, let's say that's what you did, or you ask them as part of the request for repairs, you make a decision that they're going to hire other entities, bonded, professional, licensed people to do certain things. That's great. You want to go, let's say it's going to be replacing a window that's broken. Let's say it's replacing some electrical in the panel, some of the blown switches or some things that are fried, or maybe the whole panel. Maybe the air conditioner is bad. Maybe the roof tiles are broken. These sorts of things. Maybe you're asking for some kind of an interior repair. If that's something that was negotiated and that's something that you didn't accept credit for, but you are having the seller repair using some kind of professional entity or whatever your agent happens to put on the contract, because it should be formulated that they're using somebody other than their uncle or some cousin somewhere. Something, not that there's anything wrong with those entities, maybe they're fantastic, but as long as they're licensed, bonded, insured, carry the proper credentials, have the proper experience, knowledge, and ability to make this sort of a repair, and also can write it up in a professional form so there's some kind of an accountability, that's great. But in most cases, that's not going to be the case. If some family member is going to do it, or maybe even the owner took a Home Depot class a couple months ago and thought, oh my God, I'm going to give it a whirl. But at that final walkthrough, you're going to be looking at the list of things that were negotiated, things that you've left in the seller's capable hands of repairing, fixing, modifying, whatever it may be. And when you do, you're going to go to the property, and that's part of that final verification of condition. You're going to go through and you're going to say, okay, well, they fixed the leak, or they replaced the pump, or whatever it may be. And you go through and you check them off. Now, if there's any issue there, that phone call needs to be made from your agent to the listing agent right away. That's why it's good to have an agent on your own side, because what if something isn't done, you're standing there with your agent, they're representing the seller as well. It's more difficult to get the seller to do things when that same agent is representing them as is representing you, because there's already a previous agreement there. There's also previous contracts. It's hard to play hardball when you are representing the same person that hired you in the first place. You're almost, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde sort of a thing. So having your own agent is important, and this is one of those critical reasons why. So you go through the property to make sure things have been done. In addition, you're doing that walkthrough to make sure the property hasn't flooded or hasn't burned down, or when they were moving stuff out, they didn't put holes in the walls or break the door or rip the carpet or scratch the wood or whatever it may be. Things that you can verify. That's why I always instruct my buyers during the home inspection to do a video walkthrough of the residence. I know there's going to be probably, depending on listing agents, and I always do this, Matterport 3D's virtual tours. It's going to take in all the cosmetic features of the property. They're going to be able to put a camera in the center of a room and basically scan the whole thing 360 degrees. That's great, but in some cases, it might not pick up on particular flaws. So when you're going through the property, as you're formulating your offering strategy, maybe it's during that time of walkthrough, or maybe it's during the time of home inspection, but whatever it is, you at least have some kind of video record of the property. So when it comes to that final walkthrough, you have it on your phone. You can say, God, I wonder if that was like that. I don't remember seeing that banister scratched, or I don't remember seeing that window broken, or whatever it is. And maybe you can go through that historical record, if not the home inspection report, because on there, those items that are of health and safety consequences should be written up. But if it's not there, at least maybe you have another record. But that's really that final verification of property condition. What's the enforcement mechanism or teeth to it? Well, that's going to be if something isn't as is. Let's say the garage is full of crap. Let's say there's trash. The house is in bad shape. There's stuff. I mean, it looks like they didn't care. Maybe they, upon removing televisions, maybe they left holes in the walls and it wasn't patched or painted or whatever the agreement was. Those are those things that you point out. And then that's when your agent representing you as a buyer is going to be calling the agent representing the seller and saying, listen, Jack, this isn't right. My buyers are buying a house. They're not going to take on all the seller's garbage and trash that they left in the garage. So that stuff has to be attended to. Also, when a property is turned over to a new buyer, you know what's nice? Clean the thing. Have somebody go out there and wash it and clean it. Get a service. Have them go out there and clean everything up. Get all the trash out. Leave some goodies on the counter. Congratulations, new buyers. I mean, that's good for everybody. And I don't understand in the process sometimes. People take the real estate transaction very personal. And if the buyer's asking for something, they're just trying to get what they can. And if the seller's denying something, they're just trying to get away with not doing what they can. But at the end of it, when it closes, everybody should be kind of happy that the process actually worked, especially if you knew it like I know it. It's amazing anything gets done with all the different personalities, all the different conflicts, everybody looking at it from an emotional point of view, and sometimes agents screwing things up as well, lenders, escrow officers, title people. My God, there's so many chefs in this kitchen. It's surprised, everything doesn't collapse and fall as we're trying to make it. The final verification of walkthrough. If everything's cool and it's as expected, the house is being delivered as the buyers expect it, then they sign on the line which is dotted, and typically within the next few days, depending on when it's done, because it can kind of be done anytime, but it's recommended that it's done very, very close to the end. Then you have funding and then recording. It doesn't happen in the same day. So once a property starts to become yours, it's a 2-day process. We'll talk about that tomorrow, how to get that set up with your best advantage, hopefully. And I'll explain it to you about the closings, about these other items. Also, a lot of people are under the preconception that, now you're going to have a new assessed value. Yes, that's true. That's exactly right. So the assessment on the property is going to be the particular sales price or the price you paid for the house. That's your new tax base. So if you have Melrose property taxes, they're going to be based on the price that you bought the house for. So if you're looking at historical records as far as tax rate and hoping that you're going to get that transferred to you, that should have been part of your disclosure process very close to the beginning. You should have known via some of the documents that you receive that this is going to be your tax base, and then you base that on what you happen to pay for the property. We will see you tomorrow. I'm Connor with Honor, Santa Clarita Open Houses. I was going to cover the brand new listings. If you give me just a second, there were, I think, 7. Give me a hot second here. Let me pull this up. I had it on my other screen. And there's that. Now we're going to go down and look at this. So there are 10 coming soon listings, so 765. So there's 765 current active listings on the market. And of those, and I typically do this every day if I can get this done. Let me click through here. So of the properties that are not coming soon, that are brand new on the market, 12 through 22, 10, 12 properties that are, so 11 properties, 10 properties coming soon. So if you want to see these, you got to hit your agent up. You're not going to see coming soon listings on any syndication site, not even Santa Clarita openhouses.com. You're just not going to see them because they're unable to be publicized until they become active on the market. Active 765 right now, and in the active realm, like I said, 24, 12. So there's 12 properties that have been on the market less than 0 days. So 0 days or less. That's good news. Those you can see. The ones that have hit the market right now, you can see those currently. Let me run that number. Let me run that number up real quick so you can get an idea what that is and show you those properties. So if you go to the homepage where we are, SantaClaritaOpenHouses.com, you're going to come down to Santa Clarita Valley, and under this tab, what I've done is I programmed it to show all of the most recent additions to the Santa Clarita real estate market. Now, in this search at SantaClaritaOpenHouses.com, there is no requirement for registration. You don't have to put in your personal information, none of that. So just leave it ride. And you'll see the newest houses on the market for sale listed right here. These are the properties with 0 days on market, less than 24 hours. And they're going to populate in this banner stream here across the page. So you'll see all of these properties, and all you have to do is go through and select. I have mortgage calculators plugged in with each one of them. Some of these are actually new residences, which is interesting. New residences, yes, they're here. We represent you on new housing as well. Why would you want that? You know, it's not bad to have a second set of eyes that aren't going to cost anything. And here you get a couple sets of eyes that's not going to cost anything. The builder pays us to represent our buyers out there. So you don't have to worry about your buyer, the buyer-broker agreement, at least with new housing, as far as having to pay your agent's fee, at least for the most part. But if they're on here, you're not going to worry about it. But you'll see these properties here that happen to be for sale, and these are the newest ones that are on the market, so you can feel free to click through. So you'll see all 12 that are here that have been on the market less than 0 days, and that's at SantaClaritaOpenHouses.com on the homepage. Below the video, blah, 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 boom. There it is, Santa Clarita Valley, and then that's what you'll see. Anyway, so check them out. They're all right here. If you want to see all of them that happen to be for sale in the Santa Clarita Valley, of course, click View More, and then you'll see the ones. And it's listed, the way that I have these listed, they're listed newest on the market first. You can change that if you want to see if you can get a good deal. Come over here to oldest on the market first, and then you can see, you know, if there's been any price reductions. This one was dropped 3.1K. This was dropped $20,000, and so on. If you see properties that are sitting here without a price reduction, such as this, I don't know, maybe not a bad idea to reach out to your agent and see. That's some colors. To reach out to your agent and see if you might be able to pull it off and make a less than asking price offer. But just don't wing that. Make sure that you or your agent do the due diligence as far as what the cost, what the value of that property happens to be. That's super important to do. If you're going to just go wing something without giving any seller any additional verification as to where their pricing are and what your idea is as far as where you think they should be priced, and then what your offering strategy might be, you might just create a fence and they might not even respond to you. Again, real estate should be looked at not as an emotional thing, but as a business proposition. And that should be by all parties all the way through. Don't go in emotional, because when we get emotional, we tend to make mistakes. At least I do. All right, everybody, I'm Connor with Honor. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you tomorrow and in our next real estate update. Welcome to the 21st of August. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.